So I just had a observation. As I've been reading the scriptures, I notice how the scriptures, we have most of our books of scriptures, then they cluster around certain time periods and certain people. So for example, there's a lot of prophets around the time of the Babylonian captivity in the Old Testament. There's a lot of our scriptures are just around the time of Moses and the Exodus. A lot of our scriptures are, of course, right around the time of Jesus Christ and very soon after his death. A lot of our scriptures are, even in the Book of Mormon, a lot of scriptures are around Lehi's flight from Jerusalem and Nephi's life, and you have time around there, and then there's a fairly big gap where there's very little written, and then you have King Benjamin, Mosiah, Alma, Helaman. You have a stretch in there of about 100 years where you have a good amount, but even then we have a lot more written during Alma and Helaman's time than we have during, for example, King Benjamin's time. And then you have another couple hundred years with nothing, right? So you have lots of gaps in the scriptural records. And I think that that's because God calls prophets around times of change, around times of momentous change. So for example, Joseph Smith. We have lots of scriptures from Joseph Smith, and a couple from Brigham Young and subsequent prophets, but not nearly as much. And I think a lot of that is because Joseph Smith was called as a prophet, not only of the Restoration, but right before big changes happening in the world, with the Industrial Revolution happening, agricultural revolutions happening, right before the Civil War in the United States. There were just lots of changes in the world, technological changes. The world is fundamentally different 50 years after Joseph Smith's death, right, than it was during Joseph Smith's life. And so I think that God chooses to call prophets and to make scripture around times of significant change in human history. And I just think that that's interesting. And yeah, the Babylonian captivity, for example, was a very significant change in the status of the children of Israel. And yeah, and this makes me think, it makes me want to watch out for when new scriptures are going to happen, what's going to be the significant change, that will happen within the next 100 years. When you have prophets, a lot of prophets writing and making new scriptures, canonizing new scriptures. I think when you have lots of things being canonized, I think it's time to watch out for significant change within the next 100 years.